On my worst days, I have wondered if my tombstone will read, "He checked emails." When I read this sentence from the Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less, it felt like a slap in the face. I read this book as I was still working as a consultant, so that was corporate life. And it's a very powerful book, and it's pretty popular. It's not really self-help, it's not really productivity, it's more of a life approach. And the approach is less rather than more. Focus rather than scatter. In this video, I'm going to review and share some of the, let's say, teachings of this book that are relevant for time management. Stay tuned until the end, where I will share 3 very powerful questions that will have an impact on your time management and, let's say, move the needle towards essentialism. As the word essentialism hints at, it's not about doing more. It's about doing less things, the right things. So it feels sometimes like the opposite of productivity, where we look at how we can do as much as possible with the resources we have, or doing the maximum with limited or less resources as possible. But the point is not less. It's about less things. It's not just about less. It's about major and minor. One of the questions is, are you majoring in minor activities? Is it most of the time taken up by small things that don't really matter and don't really move the needle forward? That is the point of essentialism. Look at this image, which is probably the most famous in the book. The total length of the arrows, so on the right arrow and then the sum of the length of the left arrows, is the same. But as you can see, on the left, the energy we expend is spread all over the place. That's like the majoring in minor activity I was saying before. And it looks like we're not going anywhere. On the right, the energy is only into one direction, and that is a lot of progress. Which one do you want? And if you want, this image is the most famous because essentialism is right here. This is it. It means prioritizing. It means really being fierce with what you say yes to, and especially what you say no to. And no, 12 priorities is not prioritizing. I've seen businesses saying these are our 12 priorities for the year. It's like, well, that's like having none. So it goes back to, what are you going to say no to? Because while we may not have complete control over our options, we do have control over how we choose. And yes, it's about trade-offs. And it's constantly about trade-offs. Even when you don't decide, there's actually a trade-off. So we tend to look at trade-offs as something that is hard, that we want to avoid, that we'd like to ignore. But actually, one of the points of the book is we should embrace trade-offs because they show us what it means to choose. And we can look at those options and choose the one that works better for us, knowing fully what we're giving up, but having the courage to choose it. And when we choose these trade-offs, when we choose among our options, we can be thoughtful, we can be deliberate, and we can be strategic. If we're not, somebody else might choose for us, and then we're going to find ourselves with something that we did not choose. Probably the greatest takeaway of this book, and the largest section, is about saying no. So the point is, don't focus necessarily on what you want to say yes to. Focus on what you are going to say no to. It's about removing obstacles rather than just doing more. It's about leaving things behind. It's about saying no, and saying no to people. And that is hard. But just notice something. I've just said saying no to people, but that is not true. You're not saying no to a person. You're not saying no to a relationship. You are saying no to a task, to an activity. And that is actually much more graceful than grudgingly say yes and then dragging your feet, or just burning out in order to finally accomplish something that you didn't want to accomplish in the first place. Essentialism has many other lessons, and I think I might do a follow-up video, but I think we already take home a lot when we focus on no, when we focus on removing, on quality rather than quantity, and on progress on one or very few things rather than just scattering all over the place. This brings us focus, because that one thing becomes the thing, and then we can put all our energy, and we give ourselves the permission to put all our energy into that. And yes, it takes courage, and it takes time and effort and practice to build that courage, but it's going to be the greatest change in your life. Saying no to something, even if it's something you want, in order to focus to something that is even more important to you, is key. And so saying no takes courage, and we don't always have that. Oh, I know I don't. But if we practice every day, starting from small things, we can build it up, and we can come to a place where we actually feel better. Here's how you can do that. Question number 1. What can I remove from my life that is not bringing value to my journey? Quietly eliminate or scale back an activity for a few days where you think, this might not be so essential, and see what happens. Maybe it's something that you picked up and you started doing with your team, and that maybe it doesn't bring that much value anymore, and nobody really cares if you start scaling back or have a conversation about it and trying to figure out what would add value. Second, look at your to-do list. What can you say no to? What can you remove? And you can practice saying no gracefully and respectfully. And remember, you are saying no to a task, not to a relationship or a person. Negotiate, figure out your trade-off, and walk into that activity, whether it's a yes or it's a no. Walk into that conversation with your eyes wide open, knowing what it will cost you to do it and what the outcome will be, not just for you, but also for the other person and for maybe the company at large. Number 3. When considering something and trying to prioritize, ask yourself, if I did not have this opportunity, how much effort would I be able to put into it to create it? If the answer is not much, maybe it's not something you need to do in the first place. Another perspective is, if I wasn't already involved in this project, what would I do? How hard would I work to get into it. And that will probably give you the answer of whether you should take the opportunity or whether you should drop the project. And if the answer is no, then you have it. I hope this video was interesting to you, and I really encourage you to try to take the first steps of starting small, but picking up the habit of removing things rather than adding them in your life. It will make so much change and move the needle forward in such a way that you'd be wondering why you were doing so many things in the first place. And yes, it's not easy, but you can ease into it and try small steps. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, share it with someone who could benefit from removing things from their life, and subscribe to the channel for more videos. And yes, there might be a video coming on Essentialism again, because there's so much more. Thank you for watching.